Welcome to Tell This Story, the podcast that redefines what it means to thrive after a life of service. I'm Doug White, a veteran, retired first responder, and the author of Hiding in Plain Sight, the truth about trauma, service, and the way forward. This isn't just a podcast about service, it's about what comes next. It's about the conversations we've avoided, the silence that strained our relationships, and the healing that we didn't know was possible. Through unscripted, real conversations with veterans, first responders, spouses, and thought leaders, we explore what it means to become whole, to be the person we were always meant to be. Hiding in Plain Sight isn't just my memoir, because this was just never my story. It's an apology letter for the damage done and a love letter to the woman who stayed. It's also a map for anyone to try to find their way home. So whether you're still wearing a uniform, carrying the weight of your service, or loving someone who is, the space is for you. It's never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. Tell This Story is proudly brought to you by Polestar Coffee, veteran-owned and operated craft-roasted coffee. They fuel the brave with the finest blends crafted for those who push the boundaries every single day. Learn more about Polestar Coffee at polestarcoffee.com. Use the code THISSTORY at checkout and receive 10% off your order. If you're here, hit follow, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. We can grow stronger than before, together. Today's guest is Eric Tung. He's a law enforcement professional with over 17 years of experience spanning patrol, canine, investigations, training, and supervision. Eric brings depth, authenticity, and hard-earned insight to the conversation around wellness in our profession. He's currently a police commander in Western Washington, and he's the host of Blue Grit Radio and the founder of Blue Grit Wellness. It's a platform devoted to holistic fitness, mental, physical, and emotional for those who serve. Eric's also a husband and a father. And he's someone I've long respected for his leadership and real talk around resilience, growth, and showing up as your best self both on and off duty. I was introduced to Eric through our mutual friend John Kelly, the law enforcement life coach. And I also had the chance to meet with him in person last month at the Second Alarm Project conference in Orlando. And let me tell you something. Eric is the real deal. In this episode, we're going to get into how cops can take care of themselves without an apology, why leadership begins with listening, and what it actually takes to build a culture where trust, accountability, and wellness are the standard, not the exception. So without any further ado, let's get ready. So we joined the show in progress. I'm here with Eric Tung. I'll read all that stuff later. But so part of the conversation we're having, I miss so many good conversations that really should be part of a show. Why not recording it, just having an hour conversation before we start the show? But anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking about authenticity and people in the first responder wellness and optimization and health space. And, what I was going to say when I realized we should be recording this was that the people that we speak to, they're already suspicious of anyone and anything, especially if it's about change or if it's different than what they're used to. They're going to be suspicious of it. So if you're not authentic, if you're not speaking to them for the right reasons, that stuff's going to show through, man. They're going to smell you before you walk through the door. And once you lose a first responder or a veteran or people that are, normally hypervigilant like that, looking for angles, you're never going to get them back, man. You lose them. You get one shot. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you're a dick, they're going to know and you're done.
Yeah, I think it just goes to trust building, and just talking to a boss pretty recently about how tenuous it is to build trust and how quickly you can lose it. And then sometimes that you don't get a second chance, especially in our type of culture and career. There's so much riding on it, right? It might be this misstep or this, maybe a different version of what you're told, but then you feel like you're undercut. But because of what's riding on our job, when you have a leader that you feel like has undercut you, you're like, okay, if you're willing to undercut me here, or the peer that's appearing to backstab you there, like what else are you willing to do? Because at the foundation, like I'm supposed to be able to rely on you with my life, foundationally. So it's, sometimes it's just gone. It's just gone.
Well, no, that is the leadership message. And if I can't trust you with the little things, there's no way in the world I'm going to trust you with the big things. And, to circle back to Jocko, he talks about that. By the way, everybody who's listening, both of you, we were talking about Jocko before the last conversation started. But anyway, to circle back to Jocko, he calls that leadership capital. And every time that you do something, you make the right decision, you build that trust, you're making a deposit into that account. you don't have to use it all the time. And so the best leadership things that you can do won't cost you a thing. Just authentic leadership with moral courage and doing the right thing for the person, for the organization, and the whole. You're just building more and more leadership capital, and you see it all the time, man. Um, I've gotten calls in the last 2 weeks. I've gotten several calls from local and regional law enforcement personnel who counted on their organizations and their direct supervisors to protect them, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like career altering decisions and punitive action for something that is months old, and there was no impact to the organization, no impact to the profession or anything. It's just punitive, man, for no reason. And is it a betrayal? Some of the things are, but you lie to a person, or when they trust you to take care of them or to lead them in the right direction, and you don't. Um, yeah, you don't recover from that, and you shouldn't be able to recover from that. If you're a bad person, then it should be known that you're a bad person. That's just my
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, it's so tough, especially in the last few years. I think that there were so many leaders of all ranks, truly, that said, hey, like, we got your back, like, we're going to get through this. And then once the pressure started mounting, once it was something specific, like a specific threat or pressure or stressor, whether it was local politicians, whether it was that specific complaint or that one thing, like going to the media, it's like you saw across the country, like people crumbled. And there's so many personal anecdotes of cops, first responders that said those types of things, either in small circles or publicly after the fact. And so it says so much for those leaders that they actually stuck to what they said. And they're out there, right? And I don't want to focus on the negative for sure. Like you see quite a few of them now that are, I mean, they came out of the shadows a little bit more quickly, or even through the scrutiny. They're like, guys, we got a job to do. Like this, I'm all down for, some types of reform conversations. Like we always have an opportunity to get better, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. And also, like the majority of us are we're trying to do our best. So like we're here at the table. If you want to talk to us, not scream at us, like we're wanting to have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely, man. The intent is there. I've never met a person in my 30 years of professional life. I've never met anybody who woke up in the morning and said, "I'm going to violate somebody's rights,"
Mm-hmm.
or "I'm going to find a single mom who's having trouble finding or making ends meet, and I'm going to give her a citation or a handful of citations," or I'm going to be a person and berate a dad in front of their kids on a traffic stop or at a grocery store. Nobody does that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody does that. And the thought that that's what we do, or the perception that that's what we do, that's just ridiculous. I've never met that person. Now I've met some people that maybe shouldn't be in law enforcement. At some point they find their way out. But there are some incredible leaders out there. I've read several articles. A lot of the stuff that you put out is incredibly fantastic, enlightening, and your blog, you hit everything, bro. And it's fantastic. If you want to know about resilience and growth and leadership and how to pass an oral board or how to get on with a law enforcement agency, promotional guidance. I mean, bro, you're like the whole leadership package and a one-stop shop with Blue Grit. And I love that. And I want to get into that, but there's a lot of good folks out there, and Dr. Travis Yates. If you've not read any of his stuff, read it, man. It's awesome. I mean, it's thought provoking. There are several people out there that do blogs or post on LinkedIn, and generally when I see them, I mean, because the algorithm's there, I get it every once in a while. But every time it does, they seem to hit me right where I'm at, and it's incredible how that happens. But I had a conversation about you just the other day, and I don't know if you guys have yes, y'all have connected. Jason Palomera.
Yeah.
Okay, the co-author of A Living Blue, the guy who did my shirt.
I got his book behind me on the shelf somewhere there.
Okay, I've got two of them back there. One is heavily tabbed, and one's a display piece that he signed. No, he sent me one that was signed, so that's the display piece. The other one is well worn and dog-eared and annotated. I remember now because he did say that you guys have connected, but we were talking, and I said, "Yeah, man, I got to spend a couple of days with Eric in Orlando." It's like, dude, he is the real deal. And I just started laughing, and he's like, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "It's hard to explain, Eric." I said, but what you see is exactly who you are. And again, 48 hours, but we've been connected for a couple of months, texting back and forth and conversations like this. So I got a pretty good feel of what's going on here. But I told Jason, I said, when you meet him, I said, he is and I started giggling. I said, he is the human personification of a kitten sticker in the top corner of your spelling paper. He's like,
Oh,
what?
man.
And I said, like when you're in like third grade and you get your spelling test back that you've been sweating over and you look at the top and it says -0, you're like, yeah, I'm a winner. But the teacher went the extra step and put that little kitten sticker up in the corner, the you got this kind of sticker. It's like, yeah. Eric is just that extra, that extra sticker. So,
Wow, dude,
and he started laughing. He goes, bro, you got to put that on a graphic. I said,
that's a different kind of compliment. I received that compliment. That's cool. When you were describing it, I was like, oh God, where's it going? And then it made me think of the cheesy, like actual, but then it became like a meme, like the motivational poster.
yeah,
And it's the kitten. Yeah, hanging there. Yeah, hang in there. And I was like, I mean, I feel like that kitten a lot of times, which is like really where a lot of the energy from
No, you're like
this project comes from.
If kittens had thumbs, it'd be the sticker that's doing this. The old
Oh,
finger
man.
gun. It's like, hey, you
Okay.
got this, champ. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're that guy. And it's I don't know, in my mind it was a lot funnier and it cracked me up when I said it, but it just came to be your little kitten sticker in the top corner of a good spelling test.
No, it is it is funny to
I'm gonna
me.
edit
It's
that
like,
out because
I've
it
never
sounds
gotten
ridiculous.
No, I think keep it in. I've never I've never gotten a compliment like that. But I'm here for it. I appreciate that, man. I think it's so much like a lot of what we were talking about before you started recording was like the authenticity. Like you talked about a little bit of it, but people in the space or people that we interact with or through our careers. And there are those, I think it's so challenging because in trying to pass on and build like a positive, constructive message, sometimes I've tried to figure out like how I could best reach those people. Like, and then this sticks in my mind a little bit, which means that I have an insecurity about it, right? But partway through this Blue Grit thing, I was talking to a colleague, and we're not the closest, but we've been getting along for a long time. And he made a comment, and in reflection after walking away from the conversation, I couldn't help but think that he was talking about me. But he's kind of talking about, you've known someone for so long, and then when you see them out like doing or speaking or saying a different tone than what you're used to, you're like, was that the real guy or is this the real guy? And I thought about it afterwards. I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to revisit that conversation. I was like, but ultimately, like, it made me think about things. I'm like, well, of course, when I am at work with different work groups, I talk differently. I have different relationships.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, that's for everything. Like, I hope I mean, this is a thing that we'll talk, I'm sure, like in our conversations and in your book and in the topics we talk about is like, you don't want to be the same person at home as you are at work. That's not effective. That's not the goal. But certainly, like, I talk differently with my direct boss than my last direct boss because we have a different relationship. Or when I'm talking about on the show, and I think this topic will be mostly for prospective hires, I'm going to have a different tone and even different vocabulary, different concepts than talking to you for those that are in the job and trying to toggle that balance and identity. So I'm like, well, that's just like life, man. Like and so I overthought it for a bit because that's my nature. But then I was like, you got to reach people where they're at. That's kind of what emotional intelligence is, right? Like, how do you adapt your message to the person that you want to receive it? Like, meet them halfway.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely it, man. You've got to know your audience and be able to, I guess, modulate, not really your personality because you're not changing anything. There's a sliding scale, man. And I think you laid that out perfectly. You can't be that same person everywhere. Now, if it's, if you go to a restaurant and you're berating the server, and then you're helping an old lady across the street like a Boy Scout later. Wait a second, we gotta work on some issues here. There's some character flaws in there that we've identified, but
that's where you see the value discrepancy, right?
Yeah,
like there's a lack of respect in one situation, and then disrespect in the other, and then that makes you doubt the intention of the good old lady thing, right? Because before, like, you're treating someone like they're your servant, like you're subordinate, just because they work there, just because they're trying to help you get fed. So for sure, man.
Yeah, those are character issues. I look for stuff like that, and let's get down to the business of this show.
Mhm.
So Eric Tung, big fan. We've established that. But
Thanks, man.
what brought you to the thin blue line? What got you into law enforcement? And I've heard this story and I think it's hysterical, but
Yeah,
the
I
cop
mean,
stuff, how did you get there?
there's a lot of different versions of like how much time do we have, but I will think. I mean, this time I'll try to do a crash course that I think is foundational for a lot of us. But like really, like how I was brought up. My parents were immigrants from China and Taiwan. I was born in the States, but because of their story, the immigrant story, but then also my grandparents fleeing, communist China, the takeover, like both sides of my family like fled. They left everything behind. They're pretty affluent, but when the dictatorship's taken over and you have jail or death waiting for you, like it really speaks to like what you're about and what you need to do. And so I think that in some ways, although I was raised really traditionally with a lot of expectations to excel in schoolwork, go to grad school, like doctor, lawyer, that kind of thing, like that was like truly ingrained in me as like an expectation. Um, I always had an affinity towards those that served, like military service. I was in school with 9/11, and so that struck me a certain way. I was always interested in ROTC or JROTC, but it was like a no-go for my family. Like they're like, absolutely not. However, in high school, college, taking all these different courses, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, like quickly, I was like, not pre-med, okay, not computer science, okay, not this, then what else? And I was painting houses and I was running a small franchise and outfit, and I was like, okay, cool, like working with people is fine, but I wasn't money motivated, and so it was really, past the halfway point in college where I did the deep dive soul search, or one of many to come, I suppose. I think I'm going through one now because I think that's how life should be led in some ways. But yeah, I just wanted to be a first responder. I wanted to be boots on the ground. I wanted to do something of extreme meaning and value and service. And so I just threw myself at every like police and fire resource I could find, which at the time, 2005, 2006 was not a ton, but I was buying books and I was doing what I could, prepping, just working out a ton, like making a rucksack before rucking was cool, and just climbing the stairwell in my fraternity, getting ready for the fire test, which was way harder than the police test. But I tested for both, and in some, like a lot of doors opened for police that year, spring and summer of '07. A lot of troops were overseas. The boomers were starting to retire in force, and so there was a lot of vacancies for the first time, really in modern history for police. And I remember one of my buddy's moms made a clipping because she knew I was testing, and it was a small town out like just north of Seattle. The chief was actually interviewed with the Times saying like, I just had the first dude ever like turn down a job offer. He's like, these are unprecedented times. And the article is also talking about how many vacancies Seattle had at the time. And she clipped it knowing that was probably me. And I was like, oh yeah, that was me. That was me for sure. Because I had options, right? Like I had other backgrounds that were wrapping up, and I knew at that point, you hit a point as an applicant where you're like, okay, I'm getting a job. It just depends where. So, but yeah, that's kind of a version of what brought me here.
That's very cool. I like to have options, and you're right. That was an unprecedented time, '05 to '08, especially with the way the civilian job
Mhm.
market was going. I was I was assigned to the training division down here at that time, and part of that was recruitment and screening. So we'd have all these applicants coming in, and then we're sitting in class, and as a class coordinator, as an instructor, I would do introductions and find out who everybody was, and I was amazed at the academic pedigrees that were in the rooms and the experience. I mean, it wasn't just the 18 to 22-year-old kid looking for a job because they had to pay bills. I mean, we had people
Yeah.
there from Boston College with MBAs. In
Mhm.
one class, we had 3 Black Hawk pilots.
Wow.
I mean, you have kids with options still coming to big organizations. It was great, and we're not seeing that now. I mean, there's vacancies all over the place. It's incredible, and I don't know what the answer to any of that is, but yeah, it just when you came in having options to where we are now, a lot of people aren't selecting the first responder disciplines as that option,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I think I do know what the answer is. It's not like I can fix police recruiting, but I was able to be part of a team that helped our agency in dismal times and like unprecedented for our region up here. And it's not simple, and it's not just what a police department can do. It's not what a chief or a recruiter can do, but it's like what everyone can do in the PD. And that's like culture. That's all the things that you know so much about and you teach about and you talk about and you've written about. But it's leadership at all levels, right? But then it's also like, how do you integrate this, like this oneness of community? It was not us, them, because I've done enough years of the service to us, them, and it does not serve anybody. It certainly didn't serve me at my core or those in my personal life, when it's us, them. And I talk about that, and I'm happy to share about that, as many cops are, and a lot of first responders are, that have reflected and they're trying to get to a healthier, more positive place. But it's also like the community, and you look at, like in conversations of post-traumatic stress, we look at communities or times when there were fewer incidents, or there are fewer incidents, and it's that support of their warrior culture. And I'm not trying to create this like warrior guardian conversation, but people that are there to serve and protect, soldiers, first responders. There are communities where they are very of the community, right? Like Israel's an example that is frequently brought up, because everyone needs to be enlisting, right? Like it's just part of your community, and they're also constantly under attack. And I'm not trying to talk about current times also. I know that that's probably not what your listeners are thinking I'm trying to do. It's just, that's been an example for 20 years. They talk about how the Israeli folks, they support the people that come back. They support because they're of the same community. They're the same people. And if we can get closer to that slowly but surely, then we're going to be able to have people wanting to do this job, because the people that become first responders of all types, dispatch, COs, they care deeply about people. That's the only reason why you would sign up for any of this stress and scrutiny and all that. But it's going to be worth it when you care and you love people enough.
Yeah, no, that's certainly where it's at. I had a conversation just the other day with a first responder, and we were talking about my book, and specifically when you're getting to that point of burnout, when the empathy that we came in with starts to fade. And it's a dimmer switch. And for some people, it can be an immediate, okay, we're done being nice to people, depending on what's going on. But that empathy will fade to apathy, and then could fade to indifference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good place to be in for a first responder, because
Terrible place to be. Yeah.
It's wholly unhealthy, one, as a human being, to lose all empathy. But then when you start looking at people like, hey, this is a self-inflicted thing. You've stayed here, you've made bad decisions over the last 20 years, and you want me to undo this in, a 12-hour shift when I have 100 calls holding and we're down 5 bodies today.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, you start to lose that. What can we do? And hopefully have some insight on this, but what can we do as first responders to ensure that we, I guess, hit that relief valve to make sure that we don't get into that? Is it self-care? What do you do that?
That's the answer. I'm glad you already outlined it. And I want to shout out to our mutual friend, like Travis Gribble. Like, I'm so fortunate that I was able to help get him to my region to speak, because you're talking about that apathy. Like, he outlined it very well in his story, like the compassion fatigue. And it becomes, he described it as just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm watching all these people, the human beings, doing these terrible things to each other. What is the point? And that's where, the cynicism becomes what I would like call nihilism, where there's no point. And that's an absolutely dangerous place for an individual, for a culture. And we dance with that a lot in first responder work. And I do think specifically police work, because that's what we know best. So what do you do for that? And that is, it starts internally, like it starts personally. And that, I'm glad you already said it, self-care. And I know that a lot of people, probably not those listening to either of our shows, but they like to outline it because they are the ones that are influencing and working around, and they're going to be teaching, leading, mentoring those around us, because all of us in our circles and communities and agencies have those personalities, right? The toxic ones. It's not to shame them. We understand why we got there. We've all dabbled in it ourselves, right? We've all put our feet in it. But what do we do for that? And that is like actual decompression, right? Like, that is taking time off. That is taking time away. And so there's a role for the person to put in the time. There's a role for the family to plan the vacation, turn off the phone when you're not on call, not have it right by your bedside if you're not on call, right? And not checking your emails when it's your day off and you're not expected to. Like that'll be there. Or trust. I'll inject this kind of going out of order, but like that's an ego issue. And I played with that a lot. I still grapple with that because I feel like I need to be checking things like so I can fix it. No, because if I trust my people, they'll manage it or they'll just freaking call me if they really need it. Like they have my personal cell. Like everyone has it. So that's a sidestep of like caring too much. But it's also on the agency, right? I don't think it's all on the agency. I don't think it's all on the individual, but it's on both because we need to be able to approve the time off. We need to be able to, make the scheduled shifts or the policies enable people to actually decompress, like take their time, like work out on duty, work out off duty. Like all these are actual tangible things that can help us be better human beings, be better regulated so that we don't burn out, and so we're not redlining because I think a lot of the people that tune into shows like ours are more likely to do those things. They're the best intended. They are workhorses. They are absolute performers and achievers, self-sacrificers, and they will burn out. We will, and I have danced with that. You have danced with that because no one's going to tell you to slow down, or they are, and you're going to ignore it because you have the mission.
Yeah, I was there. I remember the first time that was happening to me. We had this is going back to 2012 and 13 timeframe. I was a traffic supervisor. I had nothing to do with traffic. I didn't want the job, but it was more of an administrative supervisor position for the command staff of the district. And you also did traffic. So I was managing the motor unit for the district, all the traffic crash investigators, plus all the traffic grants and traffic safety grants, plus doing the administrative stuff for the administrative lieutenant, captain, and major. We had
It sounds awful, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, well,
you say
learn
grants,
quick.
and that's like nails on a chalkboard because I have to do some sometimes.
Well, I married an accountant. Well, I married a wonderful woman who later became an accountant. So
yes.
Keeping track of grant money and spreadsheets, it was so easy for me. I just watched her do it. So she was wonderful to help me out. But I didn't like any of that stuff, but I learned to like it because it was new skills and all that stuff. But to the point, I had, 16 personnel assigned to me, but we had a guy who got promoted to sergeant and decided that at the day before he was supposed to be promoted and the shift changed and everything, he turned it down. So now we're short a sergeant on midnights. And they're sitting around the table and it's like, hey, we need somebody to fill in on the midnight shift until we get this sorted. Yeah. Like, I could do that. What? So you're going to be an acting sergeant working a midnight shift when all the personnel currently assigned to you work the day shift. How are you going to manage that? Oh, we're good. So now I've got a brand new corporal. I was a corporal, now promoted to acting sergeant, just pay difference and bill it. So I've got a brand new corporal learning how to be a corporal while I'm a corporal learning how to be an acting sergeant. I get a brand new lieutenant who was a sergeant who's learning how to be a lieutenant. And I picked up an additional 12 deputies on night shift, plus all the other stuff that I was doing and recruits because they had me be the field training sergeant at the same time. This went on for a year and it got to the point where it was critical. And the lieutenant came to me, or one of the lieutenants came to me and said, hey, the major said to check in on you to see if you need any help, if you need us to shift any of these things away. I was like, no, I'm good. I got this. We knew you were going to say that. So here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to take this senior person and help the administrating of the grants and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, that's not necessary. Man, it was necessary because I was drowning.
And you still tried to fight it.
Oh yeah, no, I was drowning. Even if you take a knee, we fight to get back up. And I was on a knee for probably a good 6 months of that time. And it was great learning. It was great experience. I had a great time, great platoon. Everything was great. But man, I was a shell at home. And I think that was probably the very beginning of being the guy that can do everything. And it was wholly unhealthy. I mean, looking back on it now, but you're right. The people who listen to our shows and shows like this, we got this. We got this. We want to be the problem solver. We check our emails on the weekends. We take vacation so we can work extra duties or overtime or off duty. I've seen people do that. Like,
I've seen people do that. Yeah,
it's the fair. I'm going to take my annual vacation and I'm going to max out off duty over these 2 weeks. Bro, why? Why are you going to
Yeah.
do that? And
Yeah. So I can reset my sleep, and then I can work that off duty, because then it's more like a security thing, or it's
uh,
flag, it's more chill. So it's like less likely. So then like I can have more energy overall. And you're like, man, there's a calculation that might
yeah,
make sense. But when
yeah,
that's like your default, like
that's
let's
not how
pump the
that works,
brakes.
man.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
how that works. I didn't take a vacation, like a true vacation where I was unplugged, probably my entire career.
Mm.
I mean, I remember, being a sergeant in the Homeland Security Division, sitting at the cruise terminal, waiting for the phone to die because we were too far out in the water, and I'm still on the phone with my major and lieutenant. I was that guy, man. So
Yeah,
yeah,
man, I can.
self care was not my thing. It wasn't a word
Yeah.
that I knew.
And that's such a relevant, even the taking time off and unplugging or actually disconnecting, right? Actually taking time away. I know this is a common thing, but a lot of people, a weekend won't do it. A long weekend, a staycation won't do it, because you're still in your same routines. Like, get in the woods. Like, you don't have to go far. You don't have to spend a lot of money, right? Like, but if you do a staycation, you need to shake up like your routine. So you're not put your thing, like turn your phone off or put on airplane mode, your work phone. Maybe even put your real phone on airplane mode, right? Like, how often do we do that? I'll say for people like us in the quote unquote creator space, podcasting, like, man, like that's social media and just always being on our devices. It kind of disgusts me when it tells me my screen time. And I know why I'm doing it, so I don't beat myself up, but I do tell myself, okay, how can I manage that? How can I play with taking less time on social media? Or if I'm trying to work on the podcast more, I can't do both and do my job if there's more projects coming and show up the way I want to at home. But to go back to vacation, I know for years, and it was actually more of a problem as a newer officer, because you're learning all of these things like vigilance, and man, that hypervigilance, like I had a hard time going overseas even with friends, like traveling. One, that you're in a new country, so you're like, who's going to jump me or try to stab me, and I'm going to get him first. But at the same time, just days of like being on edge until you're actually able to get into vacation, right? You actually feel the decompress on day 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
And I know that's a common thing. And I think I'm doing better getting there because of the intention and trying to be better about self care. So I would put that nod out, or that nudge out, for people in that respect.
No, that's a great point. Being mindful and intentional, understanding that this is going to take time, and then intentionally making that shift. Those are great points, man. I've never been to Las Vegas because of that, and my
Mm.
wife wants to go to Vegas so bad, but I don't want to be around drunks. I don't want to be around crowds or a strange city or any of that stuff. We went to Savannah years ago, and the homeless issue has gotten pretty bad there in Savannah.
Oh, that's too
And
bad.
well, at that time, I'm sure it's probably
Okay.
cleaned up by now. It's been 5 or 6 years,
Well, most
but
cities are not cleaned up by now, but I was just in Charleston, which I know is like, it's like a slightly bigger
Mhm.
Savannah. I hear similar things, but it was great. Just super
Yeah,
cleaned up.
no, I saw your pictures. It looked fantastic. And
Yeah.
Nashville is clean, but down by the river in Savannah, it was dicey at the time.
Mm.
And Michelle, anytime we go someplace, we usually will take a run through the city. So we ran all the squares. Savannah is built on squares, and everything has a
Mm.
fountain and a statue. And you had the homeless bathing in the fountains, these historic fountains, and everywhere you went smelled like weed or urine, and just we're walking down the river. It's night. We've got the kids with us, and I'm like, man, I've got a gun because this place is so dicey. And man, I was wound up the whole time. I couldn't wait to
Yeah.
leave Savannah. And I love Savannah. I think it's a cool city with a lot of history and great food, but I could not decompress, man. And
Yeah.
but being mindful that that's what it is, and being intentional about shutting that off. I think a lot of work has been done trying to explain hypervigilance to people, and I've done a lot of work on myself trying to get beyond it. It's always going to be there, man. You spend 10, 15, 20 years in a state. That's not something that's going to go away unless you do things to mitigate it along the way with
Yeah.
self-care, with taking that time off to decompress. So wellness, how did Blue Grit Wellness kick off?
Yeah.
Because
That's
it's odd. I mean, you don't look like you're in shape or anything, but
oh, thanks.
I'm kidding with you, man. You're
Yeah.
always working out, even in the airport.
I've been better, but it's always a work in progress. I mean, like, well, I say that, like, health is relative. So a little deviation is like, I do have my tendency to be like, oh, I'm not in the best shape of my life, but maybe I am in some ways, because, yeah, am I the fastest I've been? No, and I'm closing on 40, I don't think I'll be faster than I was in my mid 20s when I was running and sprinting avidly. I also, like, I'm not going to chase a deadlift PR. I'm like 99.999% sure. Like, I'd done that. I was at my strongest at a point, and I won't be stronger than that. And that was actually hard for me to walk away from that, in my late 30s, 36 or something, where I'm like, I'm not going to keep trying to, beat this deadlift. But then I was like, well, for what? Because I'm flirting with injury, and I'm not competing. I'm not sponsored. I'm not like an athlete. I'm just a guy that really enjoys deadlifting, and I have a job to do that requires physicality. But is this the thing? And so I'll say, like, my joints feel great. I'm not lifting nearly as heavily, but I'm also not wrapping my knees and my elbows. Like, I was doing that. Like, we see some of those archetypes that they'll do that into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to get their max. And I'm like, man, I'm trying not to judge, but also I worry about them, but not me. So that's not for me. But what started Blue Grit Wellness? A few things. So I got really into fitness and nutrition because of the job. I didn't grow up playing sports or really with a heightened awareness of like eating healthy. I was a latchkey kid, and so I was crushing a sleeve of Oreos and hiding the evidence. Before my loving mom came home, and she made us like healthy food and left it for us. But of course, my sister and I, we found the good stuff. But in police work, I suppose, like, realizing that I wanted to do, like, I work and have worked in a busy agency, a lot of crime. And so I wanted to be the guy that could, that could tangle with the bear, as you call it, that persona or that adversary in your book. But that there's always going to be someone bigger, stronger, younger, fitter, potentially, right? So, like, I got to do my damnedest to stand up with my training and my mindset and my teamwork, like, to do that. So, wanting to build more muscle, wanting to be more fit, and then realizing, like, it's not just the gym, it's nutrition. And then I wanted to do canine after I got into the job. And so I'm like, well, I got to, like, track these guys and chase these guys and lift this dog and go up and down the ravines, cut through fences, like, all that. So I was like, I needed to be like a freaking jaguar. So, like, I just like kept diving into it, and I was like in everything. I was finding podcasts. I was reading like the categorical, like, muscle fitness, like, forums, but also like YouTube fitness was very much a thing that was growing at that time. So just doing the dive and everything from, like, biohacking before it was called biohacking is what I evolved into following, but just like nerding out. And so even in my personal social media, I felt like I was kind of being that annoying guy, like, posting my workouts. So I started a new page, which was just like lifting, because other lifters, other friends that are into that, like, they would follow and they would comment and like, and I'd follow them and all the things that they were working on in the gym. And so, like, there was kind of the foundation there. I got really into peer support from, just the stresses of the job. And then 18, lost one of my closest buddies in the line of duty. And so I was a recently promoted sergeant, and I was like, man, we really have a lot of opportunity to build up our peer support, like the county does, because they came in, they helped us a ton. So shout out to King County. But when 2020 hit and we were all just reeling, I think with that, a lot of these things intersecting, I know that was kind of a long buildup, but these things intersecting, I was like, like, I'm not going to work plain clothes. I'm already, like, fine, like, being on the internet. Like, I made a comment or a few comments about how the majority of us in law enforcement we are really trying, and it went on my Facebook. And I wasn't like super sneaky squirrel about not having any uniform. I think I had a couple pictures that people tagged me in. So it wasn't like you couldn't figure out I was a cop, but also it wasn't my real name on my Facebook. But a lot of people that knew me growing up, especially high school, because those were the people most disconnected, were like, dude, you've always been a nice guy. You're this shy, like, scrawny kid, and that's, like, kind of crazy. You're not now, but, like, we need more people like you that are cops. And my response was, actually, I felt pretty insulted. But I realized, like, that was the not knowingness. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know cops growing up. I didn't know anyone else from my high school, maybe, that became a cop. But just to say, like, so many cops, like, almost all the cops I know are like or better than me, even, right? Like, they care more. They're not wasting their time on social media because they're, like, trying to close homicide cases, right? So, like, they're the people that really are, like, pouring it on. And so with that, I was pretty mobilized to be like, I want to start this page, Blue Grit Wellness. That's my Instagram that I've been working on for years, but really just trying to spread positive message, positive, constructive health tools, tips. And so that really started with like physical, some workout videos, but also nutrition stuff and pure support, like trying to attack the stigma that we're very much still like needing to fight against with mental health awareness and suicide prevention and all these things that really plague our industry.
See, this is why you're the kitten sticker in the top corner of the paper, because you've got it all covered, man. You see the need, and you passionately attack that need with solutions. Everything that you just said was awesome, man. I love that. And I wanted to ask the question, what is it that you're most passionate about? But I don't think you could pin that down.
It's hard.
Yeah, I don't know that you can. What is, I know you do a lot of stuff in leadership and just, following your platform and watching that and having met you. I mean, I know it comes again, going back to authentic place, but I want to ask, stay into fitness for a second. I'm sorry. So let me go back, stay into fitness,
Good.
but what are some of the things that you do, the things, the practices that Eric has, the dailies that keep you grounded, to keep you on point focused with leadership, your personnel, most importantly, your family? I need to get in the habit of putting that first because I didn't for many years. But what is it
Same.
that you do to make sure that Eric shows up as the best Eric for everybody who's going to benefit from your presence?
Yeah, it evolves, and as it should, right? Like your fitness is always going to evolve, and like how you manage your mental health will evolve because we're different people. Like is it Heraclitus or Heraclitus? I don't know how to say it, but you never step in the same river twice because the water's moving, and like you're a different man than yesterday when you came to the same river. And I love that, and I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's like going back to the deadlifting, right? Like, no, I'm a different dude and I need to be, and I know how to pivot that. I'm not gonna be stuck to this rigid thing. But for years it's been like basically daily like exercise. And what that means looks different now. It used to be like, I don't care, 4 hours of sleep, I'm going to the gym for an hour and a half. And that I will say, don't do that. I'll just categorically say don't do that. But for me, it's like daily movement. If I don't have time or much time, that's an excuse. You always have time. But if I feel I don't have time or I didn't prioritize my time the right way, like at least I got to do some body weight squats in the kitchen as I make my coffee, or some push-ups or some stretching or a quick walk around the block with my dogs. Like that stuff sets me so right. And then mindfulness, and that's evolving, looking different from me. I generally wake up before the rest of my family for quite a stint, just where I do a lot of my podcasts, like editing and stuff. But like journaling or sitting with intention, right? Or just trying to be mindful away from the device. That's real. I'm not a guru or anything. That's really a struggle that I'm trying to get better at. And just taking these times of pause, I've realized sometimes when I get home later, because I supervise some graveyard crews, is when I get home and the family in the neighborhood are asleep, like standing outside my car for literally like a minute and just breathing the night air and looking at the stars. I'm like, this is dope. Like, this is cool. Like, life, it sounds weird and people have like labeled me as a really positive guy. And I will say, like, I appreciate because I'm trying to be, but it's not natural. It's not a default. I was even reflecting with my wife, like, the life I have now, the career, the family, like her, my daughter, my friends, my community, our community. Like, I didn't expect this. I expected to have a good, fine, kind of average life, which is a really weird thing to say and recognize. I never really expected like anything miraculous or amazing. But if I look around and actually take time, although in the last couple of weeks, which you know personally, because I've shared a lot of this stuff, I've been extremely frustrated and extremely down. But even with that in such, close proximity in my rear view, like I can look around at my life, like truly in this moment, sharing with you in this time, I'm like, there's a lot of miraculous things in my life, like a lot that had these slivers of opportunity and luck and all these things lined up so I can have this life. I mean, I'm blessed, I'm super fortunate. And so I do remember what your original question was. So maybe I'll put a cap in it there for now.
I would say gratitude despite
Mhm.
bad days. I think that's the key, and that's something that I've been working on actually since we were in Orlando together. Um, something came up. I was sent a message from somebody on LinkedIn that I didn't know. They were told to reach out to me by someone I didn't know, and they were asking for some advice. And I had to chew on it, man. And I was like, who am I to be giving this dude advice? And we just started connecting and talking, and I found a level of flow during that week. Being there for the struggle weld. I'm going to do an episode on that. And I know I saw Travis's shirt, shift happens, that mindset shift. I was in a really good flow state and gratitude and being present in what was going on there at that conference and the people they're pouring into. I really, I think for the first time, found the value of no matter what else is going on, there are things to be grateful for. And man, I think that's well said. Shifting to leadership, what kind of leader do you hope that you're going to be remembered as? What do you think your personnel are going to think? What do they think of you now? What did they think of you, and how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, this is tough. It's probably hard because it's what I get neurotic about. Like, how am I showing up? How are these different people? Like, under my watch, I suppose there's like roughly 40 people, and so I'm like, how am I showing up to these different people? Some people know me as their recruiting sergeant, and some people know me from like we got hired together, and man, he's changed, right? Like, and as we should all change, but how will I or could I be remembered? For sure, there's times I think I would be recognized as like really uptight, a young supervisor, like up in the mix and micromanaging, insecure, right? And that's probably also my own insecurity trying to recognize that. But at the same time, I hope that people would recognize that I cared. A lot of people have told me that, like, like admin this and that, but at least you cared, right? The follow up of like, but you care, or at least you care, or even we disagree, I know you care. And I think that is one of the proudest compliments I can receive, even if they're like, dude, you're full of it, but you care. I do not even know how your brain works. Like, this is the wrong call, but I know you care. Like, so to answer your question, like, how do I hope to be remembered, or how do I know some people recognize me, like those that are following, and I know it, like we're very much aligned, is that like, he cared, right? And I think ultimately that is what I truly believe leadership is about. It's how, there's all these philosophical like deep dives and rabbit holes we can go down with leadership, but I think what I want to bring to leadership and how I want to show up through the examples of many people I've met, people I haven't met, people I've read, but it's that I helped people be better. Like, I helped them get what they needed or give them the support they need so they can just live a little bit better. They could work and live a little bit better. And that's my goal. And that's where I think wellness is very much entwined with. I know wellness is very much intertwined with agency culture, leadership morale. That's really what I nerd out on. And that's why really, what started as Blue Grit Wellness about health, it becomes about bettering our community, right? First responder community, and anyone that wants to learn from the first responder community or alongside. It's like leadership has to be a discussion, like leadership, ownership, leadership of yourself. Absolutely. So that's what I've been nerding out on most lately and trying to work on this concept.
It's funny because you just answered in that question, or in that answer, you answered my two next questions, which were going to be.
I have a way of rambling.
No, it's full circle, man.
Yeah.
I think our conversations at this point, we've had enough of them. This is not new. So,
yeah.
And I was going to go down that, what onus is on leadership to change the culture, to make resilience and wellness and growth, emotional safety, all of the things that go into a good working environment. And you pretty much answered that with the care. Letting people know that you do care and you are there for them. And we spoke about, having their backs earlier. But and you answered the onus on the person themselves to be mindful, to be intentional about their actions, to stay fit. So where do you see the conversation with Blue Grit Radio, Blue Grit Wellness, and your message? Where do you see that in 5 years? Where do you think? Well, actually, let me back up. What do you find having a voice, and you have a voice, man? It's irrefutable. What do you find is the most surprising thing that you've experienced about having a voice in this space?
I think this might sound unexpected, but I am surprised with how many people I've connected with, and like truly people on our mission, and our mission is like kind of intertwined. We're all moving the same direction. Like there are a lot of people in the space that they're in the space, cool, but then there's also people in the space that like you talk to them a little bit off recording, you're on recording, like this is a person, a guy or gal that gets it, like truly humble, truly genuine. I feel like in some weird ways, like this closeness with people that, I mean, it's not weird. It makes sense. Like we spend hours talking to each other. I've not really truly known you for more than several weeks, beyond being connected on LinkedIn, right? Or like texting a little bit. But like, I feel like I know you so well. Like I've read hundreds of pages about your life, right? And we've shared hours talking in person, on the phone, on recording, off recording, right? So like to have this gift of peership, right? Like friendship, mentorship, shared alignment, this like kind of sub community of other people that are doing the type of work and conversations we're having. That's been extremely rewarding. I think that's
Yeah.
one of probably my favorite thing. And then parlayed right on that, like right on the tail of that is like, and I get to share it with everyone. It's not selfish, right? Like the whole project's like some people, like who knows through the years how many people might listen to this conversation and they get little pieces of it, and if they return to it as a 5-year cop, they get, holy cow, like all this different layer and this different perspective. Or they're coming up in retirement and like maybe we're both gone. Maybe someone's listening to this, or they've auto uplinked it in their brain over like a second and a half, and they know everything we just said. And they're like, that was really helpful. Although those guys were freaking dinosaurs, like literal fossils somewhere now. Who freaking knows? So like that's super, super cool. And it is also uncomfortable because I'm still a shy kid. Like just like you didn't come up through your career being like, yeah, I want to hit the stage and be like a public speaker,
No.
and write a book. And yet here you are, you've written a book and you're a public speaker and you're going to Vegas to do, so like a little teaser, hopefully that's not like,
I haven't said anything yet.
oh, but it's been on the internet. It's been on the internet. So, um, but all to say, like, I didn't chart this. And to answer what you started to ask, is I don't know in 5 years. And that might sound like I'm holding it close. Part of me not knowing is not having a specific goal, because I feel it growing. I feel the passion. I'm excited. I'm trying to think of it with abundance. But when I started, I didn't have any intention of where it would go. I built it as totally just like a social media page, not trying to monetize or anything. There's monetization, which, I got in trouble for recently. And so I'm grappling with that. Like, that's an
I wasn't going to
adversarial
say
test.
anything.
I haven't said it yet, but I plan to say it, and that's not any discredit towards anybody, decision makers, my agency, absolutely not. Like I've found to violate a policy with regard to how I, was presenting myself in uniform, and then I monetize it later, my page. And so like I get it, but trying to grapple with the principle and like how I feel about that's tenuous. But literally, like I've already talked to all of my sergeants about it and said like, hey, I'm going to come to roll call, like your shift briefings. Like, I just want to talk about it, because the last thing I want is like a rumor mill of like, oh, he got written up, but for what? And so like, I want to stand and say like, hey, this is like, I'm not hiding anything. I am trying to grapple through my own opinion. So that's where I'm going to pause and kind of be delicate about how I answer my questions, but it is going to be honest. Like, I think I owe that to you, because I would want that. And we've certainly seen examples of not having that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's nothing I'm hiding from, and everything I did in plain sight, right? Like everything I got in trouble for is because of what you can find on my page. So it's there. It's not, I'm not running, I'm not hiding. It's just trying to figure out how I want to talk about it so that it doesn't come off like I'm trying to play defense or I'm trying to blame. That's not the case. But I do have lessons learned in some, like, kind of feels like a cheesy way, right? Because those that read your book, they're like, holy cow, like Doug went through the ringer. And for me, even just like this minor, what a lot of things people would say categorically, a minor thing, a minor complaint, but how much it like really rocked me. Although I like to nerd out on resilience and all these things and stoicism, but I'm like, okay, cool. Stoicism, I believe it to be true. I know it and I intuitively feel it to be true. So why does it still bother me? And I think that's a worthy conversation, that like it's worth sharing some lessons therein too.
Oh, I agree with that, man, 100%. And I I wrestled with it for a long time. I mean, with my own experience, the discipline that came along with it, publicly, I met with my platoon. I owned every bit of it. I said, this is what was going on. This is what I did. This is what happened. And I went straight stoicism. I don't get to choose the discipline. I get to choose how I respond to it. And how I respond to it is the way that you would expect me to. Put my rock on and drive out. However, on the inside, brother, I was a ball of rage. How dare you? This is a betrayal, this, that, everything else. But, having this conversation with a buddy of mine, Pete Palm, who's done several episodes with me. We're actually going to Scotland in a couple of weeks to do the Catamaran Yamp again.
Oh yeah,
All
nice.
54 miles
Saw
of this
that.
through the Highlands. So Pete and I
Crazy
are going to
ride.
do an episode on the road. But, I had this conversation with him recently, and he's like, bro, because you've been victimized doesn't mean you're a victim. Something was done wrong, but you owned it. Two things can be true at the same time, man. You could have been victimized, but not be a victim. You could take ownership for something and stand strong and convicted with moral courage and all this other stuff, but it doesn't mean you weren't harmed. And I know that's in conflict with stoicism. People can't harm you unless you allow them to, but you're a human being. The reason Marcus Aurelius's words last 2,000 years is because there was only one Marcus Aurelius. You're a human and you're going to have these feelings. You're going to have to sort them out. And I would ask anybody who's listening to this, who's been through a disciplinary process with their own organizations, whether they think it was fair or not. I made the conscious decision to give away my joy every day for 2 years. Don't do that. They've punished you. They've moved on. They're on to the next person, the next thing. The business of law enforcement, the organizational culture is going to continue to drive. They're not thinking about you anymore.
Right.
But when you consciously decide that I'm going to wake up every morning, I'm get a case of the Sundays every day before I go back on shift and make yourself physically ill and, consciously give away your joy. Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Be aware that that's something that can happen and work to not doing that because you're only punishing yourself. It's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die.
Yes.
That's not how it works, man. So I think to your point, getting out in front of it and owning it after you sort it in your own head and come to grips with it, that's the way to do it, man. That is the way to do it. You own everything. You're holding the pen, and there's no secrets. There's nothing there that can harm you. I think it's a great testimony to strength, to resilience, which actually drives into my next questioning for you. What does resilience mean to you? What does that look like to Eric?
Yeah, I mean, we all have these definitions, and I think that resilience is a part of grit, and that's why I chose that word and that concept for my branding, or I guess my pages. But like resilience, we frequently hear as the ability to kind of bounce back or recover. And a lot of great people, Travis just talked about this in his presentation, right? Like, it's kind of this expectation that you're like rubber, you bounce back. It's like, but it's also like, it doesn't mean there wasn't a mark, right? It doesn't mean like you're exactly as you were before, but there is this growth opportunity, right? So discussions that he has of like post-traumatic growth, like, yeah, you're not going to be the same. And in a lot of ways, like a lot of our experiences that shape us and change us, like we wouldn't trade them. Like I'll say I wouldn't trade them. Like, am I hyper vigilant? Absolutely. Even though I work at desk almost all the time now, am I hyper vigilant? Yes. But would I trade that? No, because I can conscientiously work towards a better balance where whether I'm armed or unarmed, whether I have a knife in my pocket or not, like I appreciate the awareness and it doesn't paralyze me. It makes me feel more confident and emboldened to navigate a threat should it present, right? If a threat presents, then I know what I want to do and I'm confident that I can adapt to that with my family, whatever, because of my training and experiences. Like I can then be at ease and enjoy my dinner because I'm like, okay, but if a gunman pops out, like I won't freeze, I won't panic. That's a gift to have that. So going back to like, that's how I think I perceive resilience, and the grit just being the add-on of like you need resilience, but it is that endurance to continue, kind of putting yourself under the forge and working through, right? just having that conviction, not just to be tough, but to continue on, kind of soldier on in this meaningful way. And it incorporates courage and incorporates vulnerability.
I love that. And the reason I was smiling, for those of you who aren't watching the videos, you said a lot of the keywords, things that I've recently come to learn about myself. I've taken a knee over the last few weeks. I've been on a couple of podcasts, but I haven't really done much or put myself out there because I'm still on my journey, trying to sort this out. What is my message? Where did I got off track trying to chase an algorithm, and you're actually going to be the first episode to this new reimagining of the mission that I'm on. And, the grit part, the resilience part, the growth part, a lot of that comes from listening to Travis and Struggle Well. I thought about this a lot when I interviewed Dr. Chris Free, the author of Operator Syndrome. And again, for the listeners, if you haven't read that book, read it. But he talks about homeostasis and allostasis. Homeostasis is the ability to stay the same. No matter what happens, you go back to that even keel. Everything is natural and fun in nature. But allostasis is taking on stress and building because of the stress. Calluses after working out because, well, who wears gloves? Please
don't be that guy.
Don't be that dude. Those are the guys that grunt doing curls. Anyway, don't wear gloves. You build up calluses, and this is allostasis. Now your hands are stronger when you go for that deadlift PR at 56 years old, which you shouldn't do. We've established, but I think because of our experiences and because of the things that we do, and we live a life of service, we put ourselves out there, and we do stand front and center, morally, ethically, and physically. We stand there to take the brunt. I believe that because of those experiences, we are forever changed. We're supposed to. And you said forged, just like the blacksmith's flame. You get put in there, you get heated up, the impurities are burnt out, take you out, they bang you into shit and form you into what it is that you're supposed to be, a perfect weapon or instrument for your purpose. And you're thrown back into the refiner's fire to burn that stuff out. I believe that our experiences are what's shaping us for our intended purpose on this planet. Like you said, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I never thought I'd be speaking in this space. This space wasn't a thing. But write a book to be vulnerable, to talk about feelings? No, brother, this isn't something that happens. I could just as easily have taken the other road and become a shell of a man and sit back and, take my ball and go home and pout about how things went. Or I could use these things to empower me to be the instrument that I was meant to be used as. And that is a gift. And it's very uncommon for people to be able to do those things. So I think because of that, if you have grit and resilience, you're allowed to experience the growth and to live a life of purpose. And I think that is a great gift. So anyway, that's me monologuing and rambling, but that's the reason I was smiling when you were saying those keywords. I was like, yes, 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 it's the right thing, man.
Yeah, I love it.
So new cops starting out, you have something now that you've put out for new cops coming in. If you had 60 seconds, what is the best advice that you can give to new cops?
Yeah, I would say continue to refine yourself in all ways, right? So look at all aspects of your health. That includes mental health, physical health, emotional, community, right? Your relationships, financial. But then even mental is like read some freaking books, listen to some audiobooks, listen to, like sharpen your tool, your brain. And also spiritually, like know your purpose and beyond just the job, but like how you serve outside of the job. I think all of these things will just make you a better, more adaptable, resilient, gritty person so you can handle whatever gets thrown at you. Or if you get knocked down, you get back up, right? And maybe you have calluses, maybe you have scars, maybe you have a bum knee where you limp after running a mile, but you can still do what you need to do. Keep working at it, stay curious, and stay hungry.
I like that.
I don't know how long that took, but
and stay gritty.
Stay gritty. I know. I was like, should I say it?
You should, man. If you don't, I'm going to say it for you.
Thank you.
What do you want to talk about now? That's all I had. I told Michelle, when you get home, I'll be talking to Eric, and she's like, what are y'all going to talk about? Haven't y'all talked about everything? No, I said, that guy's got layers, man.
We got a lot. And that's the thing. We could talk for hours on different days about everything. Like we were having this full conversation before recording, kind of catching up, and then just nerding out on all this stuff that the majority of it would be a huge benefit to people listening, just because these are things that we're working on or we've worked through or learned from. Sometimes I have a goal in coming on a show, or sometimes I encourage myself to have one. But generally, I'm just like, hey, I'm here for it. And that's even more so here because there's not a lot of people, this might sound bad. Because I'm not a natural extrovert and because speaking and then getting recorded, I dial up in a certain way because I want to sound articulate and I want to be sharp. And afterwards, I'm usually tired. Like if I record a couple episodes in a day, it's like public speaking for me. I get pretty like zonked. However, like you asked my wife later, but I was like talking about today being my day off, and I was like, I'm excited. Like I'm talking to Doug at 7, and I'm just excited. I was just excited to talk to you like a friend and connect on things. And truly, like I said before we were recording, I was like, whatever you want to talk about, because I just want to be of value, right? And like ultimately for me, I just knew it was going to be a great time, a great conversation, catching up and nerding out with a friend and colleague is really how I looked at it. So, man, like there isn't really anything specific. I think we hit quite a range of things, and to be continued as well. But
Yeah.
I think we've said all the things I'd really encourage people to think about. And just stay curious and hit us up, either one, both of us. Let us know what you want to hear about on both the shows. But that's the long and short.
That's awesome, man. I love every bit of that. I love being on this mission with you, and I look forward to our conversations and text messages. And I apologize that I called you sir this morning.
No, it's fine. I take it like I say the same things. Like I say, sir. Like sometimes it's just like friendly. But yeah, I'm like we're past that. And also, you don't work for me, so most people that's like say sir, and they're just at the agency next door. I'm like, well, thank you, but I don't. It doesn't
And I'm
put me
older than
off.
you
It doesn't.
too.
What's that?
I'm older than you too.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So yeah,
We're
that
both from the South, right? So I should be calling you sir.
that's right, Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to roll back to that. You're like, oh yeah, I'm pushing 40. I wanted to say when you said that, I hate you. Shut up.
Yeah. I
I'm
was like,
pushing
you were talking
40.
about, yeah, you're talking about 98 earlier. I almost was like, you want to know how old I was in 98?
No, I don't. I
Yeah,
don't,
no.
because you were in school during 9/11, and I was not. I was on getting ready to start my second tour of active duty. You said something earlier, and I was going to comment on that. Oh, with training, your fitness, you want to be fit enough like a jaguar to chase after the dogs. And I'll tell you, for any canine officer out there listening right now, mad respect. I used to track with K9 as a young deputy and as an older deputy, and then as a lieutenant. That was the way I got my steps in on midnight shift. It was a lot of fun. Leading from the front and getting to track with the dogs. But
Yeah.
when I was working out, the law enforcement culture was different. Than the mindset was people are going to try to harm you, and you have to survive at all costs. That's what it is. It was the warrior culture. And when I'd be in the gym, doing like NFL combine stuff, 225 on the bar, just getting after it. And a buddy of mine made a comment one day, and I'm not going to mention that because it makes it sound awful. But my response to his comment was, "I'm training to be the hardest person anybody ever tries to kill," and that
Oh,
was the
yeah.
mindset then. Now that I'm older and I work out with my son, I find that I do a lot of ego lifting because I want to let him know the old man's still in the game.
Yeah.
And I tell him, 225 is the new 135. 315 is the new 225. Get after it, boy.
Mm-hmm.
But now my mindset has shifted to I just want to live long enough to bankrupt the state with my pension.
Yeah.
That's the goal,
Mm-hmm.
man. I want to be, pop. I want to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
an old man. And I think that's important with resilience. And the point that you made is you don't need to blow out your back to prove that you still got it, man. Just be able to get up and down those stairs
Mm-hmm.
and do your job and get home and pick up your kids. That's the
Yeah.
level of fitness you need to be looking for, man. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna dive a little bit into the fitness nerd brain here because there are like these biohacker like longevity driven folks, and like if you want to live, like if your goal is to live the longest, which I already know that yours is not because of what you're into, right? Like then don't like barely lift weights, right? Like lift lightly and do a little bit, and like don't eat too much. Always kind of eat like till you're like 70% full, and like the fewer calories the intake in and like expended, just kind of be like just kind of exist. Like, you're probably going to live longer, but will you live well? And that's the key, right? And like, I know this about you, but like, neither of us, we want to be hard to kill, right? But not like, you're not training for like 2 days from now when you have the fight for your life per se, and that's it. Like, that's not the end goal. The goal is like continually be as hard to kill as practical. And that's where you're like, okay, I do need to think about next year and 3 years from now and 5 years from now. And how will I be able to move and be as hard to kill at that age, and as capable to grab grandkid, out from the going towards the street, right? That kind of stuff that I think is like truly what most of us want. And that's where I'm like, okay, if I spend more time doing mobility and not, just stacking plates or building guardrails, as I like to say in my stuff, but a guardrail was like selling half my weights when I moved, just because I knew like if I don't have them in the house, I won't. Just like if I don't buy the bag of chips, I won't eat them. If I don't have 4 plates like on each side of the bar, if I don't have them in my garage, I won't use them. I have 2.5, and that's what I'm like that's what I'm allowed to have, because I know thyself.
I like that.
Yeah.
Know thyself. That is the key. We should have started with that. Know thyself.
Yeah. But ending with it's good too.
Yeah. Know that you're going to do stupid shit. Like, in 3 weeks, I'll be doing the 54-mile, 24-hour weighted ruck through the Highlands.
Yeah. You're asking me about fitness. I'm like, no, like you're doing some crazy stuff.
I didn't make that point because I'm fit. I made that point because I'm 51 years old and I'm going to go overseas and break myself off.
That's fit. Yeah. You're doing some cool stuff.
No, it's great. You're doing cool stuff, man. Well, I appreciate your time. It's fantastic.
Nice, man.
I appreciate you, brother. You be good.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thanks for listening to Tell This Story. Eric Tung just isn't talking about officer wellness. He's living it, modeling it, and building a platform so others can do the same. His work isn't about checking a box. It's about shifting the culture. From the locker room to leadership, his message is clear. Resilience starts from within, and real strength means taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. If something in today's conversation hit home with you, reach out, share this episode, and start a conversation. You can follow Eric's work and listen to his podcast at bluegritwellness.com or find Blue Grit Radio wherever you get your podcast. If Tell This Story helps you feel seen, supported, or understood, leave a review. Subscribe and send it to someone who needs to know they're not alone. Grab your copy of Hiding in Plain Sight, because this is just not about my story. This is a bridge from survival to living. We can be stronger than before, together. We'll see you next time.